Hello friends, I'm so happy to welcome you back. This is in continuation of my previous videos where we explored the recent trend of treating science as a belief system or faith. It appears that science is now being turned into a jealous god, and we shall just see how. I encourage you to watch these two earlier videos to get a well-rounded opinion. The first video in this series is Science as Belief, and the second one is Temptations of Science, subtitled Miracles and Frauds. Physics has dominated the field of science in the last 200 years or more, and indeed the discoveries of physics are spectacular. But unwittingly, it has led to a rush in other sciences such as medicine, psychology, anthropology, sociology, economics, and a host of other fields to frame their equations of inquiry to match those in physics. They are in fact aping physics, and since they are not able to reach that standard for reasons which we shall see shortly, they suffer from a syndrome which is now officially known as physics envy. Let us explore this idea a little further. First, let us see how we have reached this stage, which we call as a physics envy. Why have we come to this pass? To my mind, it all begins both at home and at school, and in the way we learn and teach science. The seeds are actually sown at a very early age. Let's take a simple example. We all did little experiments in our school laboratories. But what were we taught and what did we learn? We shall see the example of one such simple experiment next. Consider an experiment to determine the boiling point of water. It is a simple setup as shown in the diagram, and the teacher, after demonstrating the safety precautions, will ask the students to determine the boiling point of water. At some point of time, before doing this experiment, the students have learnt in their lesson on thermometry that the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. The students report their observations, and they are different for most students, and naturally so. Let us say the numbers look something like this: 101 degrees Celsius, another student notes it as 98 degrees, a third one has noted it as 105 degrees, while the fourth student is getting 54 degrees. What is more important is what they are taught after the experiment. If they are told that the correct answer, and I want to underline the word correct answer, is that the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius, then obviously they will understand that they all got it wrong. The seeds of cooking and fudging data have already been sown in the young minds. They have been taught that even if you see such numbers in actual practice, you should try to cook your results and bring it up to the correct value. Unfortunately, the lesson that they have learned is that science is about getting the right number. Instead, they should have been explained that 101 degrees Celsius means that maybe the thermometer might have been in touch with a superheated bubble, or 98 degrees maybe because the reading was taken too early, much before the water actually boiled. 105 degrees could be because of impurities in the water, and it was 54 degrees in the last case because maybe this student was daydreaming or was not observant or was distracted. The real science is in discovering and explaining variation, not averaging observations, not getting the correct answer. Otherwise, the whole purpose of science and scientific method is lost. Let us now compare this with everyday vitals which are taken or measured in the clinic every day. Even a medical lab technician can take all the vital values, but it takes a skilled and astute medical practitioner to interpret it in the proper context. And this context is race, ethnicity, age, sex, comorbidities, overall state of health, mental worries, lifestyle, economic conditions, social status, and more. However, what we find in practice is that almost everyone participating in this measurement has become a drawing room expert, and they can rattle off these figures and even cures for it. Even a simple experiment in school lab that we just described has many nuances and, more importantly, explanations for every variation. Don't you agree that the human being needs a much better understanding just because of the sheer complexity? But this seems to be overlooked even in medical practice today. By now you must have realized that what applies to physics does not apply to other sciences, especially life sciences, simply because of the sheer complexity involved. Biology is very complex. In fact, all life sciences are very complex. So are weather, climate, etc. Is it justified to apply the linear reductionist methodology of physics to all these areas of inquiry? Other sciences are said to suffer from physics envy. They end up trying to get a 100°C result just to fit the observations so that they appear perfect. Little do they realize that they have actually sacrificed real science, because science is all about understanding exceptions and variation. What we are seeing today is actually a mathematization of everything, be it economics, finance, psychology, even medicine and sports. But we must ponder over the fact that in all these fields, the common denominator is feeling and emotion. These are very essential ingredients which make a living being into a human being. Today we realize that even our vocabulary is very limited and restricted, and increasingly people are using emoticons to express themselves because words do not suffice and words do not capture what emoticons can do. So mathematization has to be gradually displaced if we have to do real science for human beings. Richard Feynman, one of the finest scientists of the last century, had an inimitable style of teaching, and he famously once said, "Imagine how much harder physics would be if electrons had feelings." What he meant by this was that the methods of physics and mathematics should not apply to all sciences. While there is a lot of talk about social equality, the field of science is one of the most oppressive caste hierarchies. This caste system in science is based on what is called purity. Thus, the psychologist considers himself to be purer than the sociologist. The biologist is purer than the psychologist. In turn, next higher comes the chemist, who says biology is simply applied chemistry. The physicist, of course, who is the root cause of physics envy, he says the sentence which is shown: "It isn't so nice to be on top." And finally, it is the mathematician who has the day. Here is what MIT economist Andrew Lo has to say about the phenomenon of physics envy. He says, all fields of science want to reduce 99% of their observation to just 3 laws. But the sad reality is that most often in complex sciences, there may be 99 laws that explain just 3% of the stuff. This actually captures the complexity of all the other sciences other than mathematics and physics, and to some extent physical chemistry. Let's look at this a little deeper. Modern physics itself admits that 80% of the mass of the universe is made up of material that scientists cannot directly observe or measure. That's stuff that does not emit light or energy. I love this particular graphic which you can see on your screen because it is actually showing you two sets of identical pictures, one above the other. One, it says, is with dark matter and the other is without dark matter. It's really a wonderful pun in the optical sense. So really, does the caste system of purity and physics envy really have a place in today's science where we are trying to address complexity for the benefit of mankind? In his paper, Andrew Lowe calls the real world or the complexity in the real world as an irreducible uncertainty. A fancy word, but actually it's just a polite way of saying that we are totally ignorant about so many things or most of the things. And this ignorance, surprisingly or sadly, cannot be remedied by collecting more data, sophisticated statistics, nor with more powerful computers or thinking harder and smarter. None of this is going to be of any help because it is all beyond quantification. Now that is quite unnerving. We are not accustomed to this sort of science where we want everything to be reducible and certain. But that era is long past. The best way to understand what Andrew Lowe has to say is to take a look at the medical field. It is being realized that increasingly the disease-based model of medicine is failing to help people. We know more about the chemistry and the biology and the pathology and the physiology of disease, but it's not helping people. As recent events like the pandemic have shown, focus on disease-based models have led us away from real solutions. I have discussed this topic at length in another video. What has really happened is that individual patients and persons have been reduced to cases or statistical numbers, to bar graphs and to bell curves. The humanistic aspect of medical care is not considered or taken into consideration with as much rigor as it should be. Simply because humanistic aspects cannot be mathematized does not mean that they are less important. And one of the most important facts is that the entire research and approach and outlook is guided by a market-driven focus. Don't you think it is now time to wake up? It is time to get out of physics envy. It is time to go beyond numbers, graphs, and plots. It is time that we, especially those of us who are involved in medical care, in medical research, in the field of medicine, or any form of healing, start looking at humans as individual persons. So friends, that brings me to the end of this video. Let me summarize what we have discussed. We took a look at caste, purity, and physics envy. Then we also saw childhood influences during laboratory work. We also saw the influence of mathematization and how we need to go around it. We saw its impact on disease and suffering, and that now it is a wake-up call if we have to improve our own healing sciences. Healing is both an art as well as a science, and that is the balance of yin and yang that must be brought about by each one of us. Nobody from outside is going to help. Physics envy, if you are suffering from it, is within you. It has not been imposed on you by mathematicians and physicists. Let's just wake up and get about our business of helping mankind. Here are references which I used in preparing this video, and please explore all of them in great detail, and each one of them will open windows and doors to further information and wisdom. So friends, thank you very much for your attention. We'll meet once again in another video. Thank you and bye-bye.